The Deepwoken Verse 3 Direct gave us a ton of new information to chew on. We got stuff about the Central Luminant, Iron Vow, Hollowtide, but what I'm most interested in is the information we got regarding Layer 3. And from what we've been told, it's gearing up to be the most unique area we've ever seen in Deepwoken. Make sure to drop a like and watch till the end of the video to learn everything there is to know about Layer 3 in Deepwoken. I've always been the kind of person that's been a lot more interested in the world and lore than the actual game of Deepwoken. I'm a rogue lineage glazer at heart, and Deepwoken's gameplay just never really lived up to it for me, except for the intricate world building, which has always deeply captivated me. Rogue does have lore, but it's extremely bare bones compared to what we have in Deep, and for that reason I've been sort of a wiki goblin, just scouring everything I could get my hands on. And before Layer 3 was ever really a relevant topic, I was educating myself as much as I could about everything there is to know about Layer 3. The depths layers and the drowned gods have always been the most interesting part of these games for me, and Layer 3 is fixing up to give us so much more in regards to that. Hell, this game is literally named Deepwoken, and so far we've never even seen a real Deepwoken in-game, until now. Layer 3 is likely going to be the first time we ever see a real NPC in-game that is a Deepwoken, being Amorous Pleatsky. And with the game literally being named after these legendary figures, it's kind of crazy that a lot of people don't even know what a Deepwoken is. A Deepwoken is a person who has consumed a piece of a drowned god. There are currently 2 known Deepwoken in Deepwoken. Maybe we should count. Somebody in the comments type how many times I say Deepwoken in this Deepwoken video. The first and most widely known is Amorous Pleatsky, the inventor of the Flame Charm attunement, and the Deepwoken of Coralfiend, the drowned god of Layer 3 and Flame Charm. Secondly is the first prophet of the ministry. We basically have no information about this guy other than his extreme power. It's said that he could potentially defeat Pleatsky, allegedly. However, which drowned god they consumed in order to wake is currently unknown. For the majority of the video, Pleatsky will be a major player, so pay attention to that guy. So, consuming a piece of a drowned god ascends a person into a Deepwoken, but what does that actually do? Becoming a Deepwoken causes a number of changes to the individual, most importantly, immortality. It's likely that these 2 known Deepwoken are thousands of years old. I'm old! And canonically, Pleatsky must be extremely old due to his influence on the development of Flame Charm, leading into the Cataclysm, the golden age of the song. He's hailed as the inventor of Flame Charm, but he didn't really literally create the attunement. Back before the Cataclysm, people accidentally used the song, mostly Flame Charm, all the time, but it was vastly misunderstood. I have no idea whether or not Pleatsky became a Deepwoken before or after this area, but there's a lot of evidence both ways. Becoming a Deepwoken of a drowned god changes you and gives you extreme power related to that drowned god's attunement, and Coralfiend's attunement being Flame Charm might have led to Pleatsky's prowess with Flame Charm in the first place, returning to the surface to help humanity develop it into the art that it is now. Alternatively, Pleatsky could have become an adept Flame Charmer early on, developed it and taught it to the world, then intentionally ventured into Layer 3 in order to become a Deepwoken of Coralfiend and obtain more power within the attunement. The wiki for Coralfiend implies that Pleatsky developed Flame Charm as a result of ascending, but I'm not sure if there's really definitive proof of this, so I'm leaving both of those as an option. But for me, I sort of find it a little hard to believe that before the development of attunements and understanding the depths in the world that people were venturing all the way down to the 3rd layer of the depths. Pleatsky was said to be a member of the Divers, which is probably why he was exploring the depths, but would such an organization really exist pre-Cataclysm era? The wiki states about the Divers, their stated purpose is to learn to better understand the depths in order to combat its expansion and protect the surface from the creatures of the deep. But in this era, before the overuse of the song, the surface was at no risk of depths creatures, and the depths were not expanding, so to me, I'm more of a believer that Pleatsky was merely a talented pioneer in the development of flame charming early on, eventually leading him to joining the Divers later and intentionally sought to become the Deepwoken of Flame Charm in order to increase his prowess, venturing down to the 3rd layer with that purpose in mind. Even further, there's one more ginormous piece of evidence for this theory that I will get into in a second. So becoming a Deepwoken grants immortality and power over an attunement, so sounds like a great deal, right? Well, there's actually one massive downside to becoming a Deepwoken. Consuming a piece of the drowned god ties you forever to that entity. The drowned god will always have some influence over you. We don't for sure know exactly how this influence can manifest, but it's likely that they can exert control over the mind. So a massive piece of evidence for my theory on the Pleatsky timeline is if Coralfiend exerted some amount of influence over the actions of Pleatsky, why would Coralfiend allow him to teach Flame Charm to humanity? It's pretty well understood that the drowned gods and the forces of the depths don't really fuck with people overusing the song. This is what eventually led to the tides rising in the first place. It's pretty likely that Coralfiend would never have allowed Pleatsky to return to the surface in order to teach all of humanity the attunement of Flame Charm. So the idea of him pioneering Flame Charm after becoming a Deepwoken to me just feels extremely unlikely. If you have any ideas on this though, drop them in the comments and let me know what you think about my personal theory. I'm not sure if I've ever seen anybody talk about this before, but if you've seen this before, let me know. Anyways, moving on, there was one more main effect of becoming a Deepwoken, which is undergoing physical changes. A lot of people theorized that Pleatsky turned into some freaky looking snake creature, but we really have no idea canonically. The devs have apparently stated that Pleatsky quote unquote has the best dance moves, so I'm not really sure how a snake guy would dance, but personally I do hope that he somewhat resembles this because it looks sick as fuck. So one thing that I do want to touch on is what counts as consuming a piece of a drowned god. Pleatsky ate a meteor flower that was apparently part of Coralfiend. That's the one and only example that we have to go off of. Maybe this flower grew from his body and was left somewhere, or maybe Pleatsky even made a deal with the god and was offered it. One thing that I've seen people talk about is whether or not consuming one of the Scion of Etheron's bones would lead to somebody turning into a Deepwoken. This I personally do not believe in. With how many people have fought the Scion of Etheron, you think one person would try to gnaw on one of these bones. He literally flings at you.
What is fucking hitting me?
So it's likely that the avatars of drowned gods don't have the same effect. It's likely to be a literal part of the sleeping body or something that was produced by that sleeping body of the god that leads to somebody becoming a Deepwoken on consumption. You think also if somebody could ascend by gnawing on one of these bones that the Scion would be a lot more careful with them, not just flinging them at their enemies all willy-nilly? I think there would also be so many more Deepwoken if that was the case, so the way of obtaining an actual viable piece of a drowned god must be significantly more difficult than just eating a part of any drowned god's manifested avatar or something. So now that you've become an expert on the lore surrounding the entities known as Deepwoken, let's get into the actual substance of Layer 3. This layer is known as the Vents, a burning hot land with many unique creatures and places. Some of the areas that have been mentioned are Coralfiend's Garden, the City of Flames, and the Falling Steps. I'm really interested to see how a garden would look in this area, and a City of Flames, that just sounds too badass. And for the longest time, we theorized about what Layer 3 could possibly look like. Layer 1 was an open world area like the Luminance where some people argued that it lacked content, but Layer 2 was an instance dungeon which eventually got repetitive after only a few runs. But to solve this, the devs proposed a new solution which they will be continuing with for the development of Layer 3, a hybrid between the two design types. On the direct stream, they showed this rough concept of what the layer would likely resemble. The big squares are open world areas like the first layer where you can explore to your heart's content and engage with content in the area. These places, however, are individual smaller open world sections though, needing to be traversed between. The connecting sections are randomized instance dungeons that must be ventured through in order to reach other open world zones. The path of these dungeons will always be the exact same, rewarding knowledge of the layer, but each individual room will likely be a randomized set piece or prefab like a roguelike dungeon game. I personally think this is the best direction the devs could have ever chosen for this area. Before the direct, I was personally hoping for an open world area so much, hopefully having an origin or even a method to progress down in Layer 3. But the devs aren't giving us the best of both worlds. These connecting paths, since they're randomized, could be repeated and remain engaging due to the randomness, while the open world sections could be explored and engaged with and even progressed in like a normal area. And as for the enemies in Layer 3, it's likely we'll see a ton of Crimson Sharkos, as this is the layer that they are sent to originate from. But of course, hopefully we'll see a bunch of unique enemy types as well for this layer. More enemy variety will always be welcome. Now the question everybody wants to know, what are the bosses gonna look like for this layer? We have no official statements on this yet, but I do have some theories. Of course, a Scion of Coralfiend is a very likely option, and with Coralfiend's Garden seeming like kind of a bit of an outlier area on the map, it's likely that this could be a boss room. However, another very prominent option would also of course be fighting Pleatsky himself. With Coralfiend's influence over him, he could be manipulated into fighting for the drowned god. I've seen some people say that Pleatsky might be a guiding or helpful NPC in this layer, but I personally think Coralfiend might turn him against us even if he doesn't want to fight us, which would be much more interesting than just another Scion. But personally, I'm gonna pray that we get both. Upon defeating Pleatsky, the Scion of Coral Fiend could appear and face off against us with no choice left. This, to me, would be the hypest climax to this layer imaginable, but either way, both of these bosses would obviously heavily utilize Flame Charm for their attacks, but with multiple open world areas, it could be likely that we could receive additional bosses or challenges in these sections. Who knows, maybe they'll add the Lava Serpent from Rogue Lineage as a reference. Fingers crossed. One thing though that I have seen theorized about and mentioned on the wiki is the existence of the Deepwoken talent tree, implying that the players might be able to become Deepwoken. So will we be able to become a Deepwoken ourselves in Layer 3? Probably not, I say. Think about it, to fit with the lore, you would likely have to make builds extremely more powerful, and since you can't become a Deepwoken of Etheron, there would be only one god to become a Deepwoken for, so most builds would likely just be Flame Charm Deepwoken, which doesn't sound like a fun meta. And the two talents that we have in the Deepwoken talent tree don't really seem to be that related. Like Spell Shout, for example. Why is this in the Deepwoken talent tree? Depth's Connection makes a little more sense, but it's mostly starting to seem like a generic blanket talent tree for general things that don't really fit in anywhere else. And if it was really meant to be a talent tree relating to ascending into a Deepwoken, why don't we have access to talents in it right now? Who knows, it could be the case of just poor planning on the devs' part, but personally I don't think we'll be able to ascend into a Deepwoken, at least not until extremely further on in development if they choose to. Maybe eventually, after we have a layer for every single attunement assigned Drown God, they will add a method of ascending for each one, which then they could balance each Deepwoken attunement equally. But that still creates the problem of how do you balance Deepwoken builds against non-Deepwoken builds and still make it fit the lore. There's just a lot of problems that comes with it, but who knows, there's tons of ways that they could deal with that. But of course, we are probably going to get some more legendary weapons. You know how much Deepwoken loves that shit lately, apparently. But more than anything, this is a content update. It's not more legendary slop, it's content. We love content. They did mention that Layer 3 would have a, well, they didn't really mention it, they kind of beat it around the bush. Agamatsu said, should we talk about wiping in Layer 3? Which implies that there could be a unique wiping mechanic in Layer 3, which there probably is based on the way they talked about it, because in response to that, Rag said, I think we should keep it a secret for now. Something sounds a little sus here. So we're likely going to see a unique way of wiping for Layer 3, kind of like how we did for Layer 2. And it's also said that you can access Layer 3 directly from the surface, I think, or Layer 1 or something like that. So it's not going to be like super hard, like you're not going to have to beat Layer 1 and 2 just to get to 3. I don't know, something like that, like there will be an easier way to access it. But yeah, I think that's really all I have to yap about. That's my theories, that's my covering of everything stated. If you have anything else you want to add, maybe something I missed, or maybe a correction to my theory, if I messed anything up, just feel free to drop stuff in the comments, and yeah. But of course, you know, like, subscribe, everything I'm supposed to say so the algorithm likes me. I have a Discord. I'm also making like a Deepwoken and Rogue Lineage inspired game, so if you want to see updates on that, or maybe just interact with me and everybody else, then feel free to join that. But yeah, I think that's about it for the video, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.